1. Most of the things wrong are wrong inside us. We're both the broken car and the mechanic. It's hard to fix, and people seek easy. A pill or potion, prayer, a diet, a regiment, meditation, bone broth, a savior or guru. Something to heal them from the outside in. They seek this all their lives, searching every face, looking for missing pieces in bottles of gin, or a smooth dry red, a new dress, gold ring, piece of chocolate, that fixed nose, new watch, the right bag, white teeth. Whatever gets the world to believe they aren't as broken as they know themselves to be. Some take journeys they call vacations, trying to find a place where they can just stop, think. An empty beach, a high mountain, a silent desert, a city without people, an island without buildings, a brothel where they can be loved, some place with more meaning or myth. Maybe it'll rub off. They can borrow some. Maybe it can fix them. This trip was that kind of thing. A doorway you have to cross to get to the other room. Her name was Estella, so they told her. When someone called the name, she knew they were calling for her. She'd look up, or come, or hide. She was 7. Her mother was Maria. She cringed at her name, and she was 32. 2. They arrived in the southern reaches of Patagonia on the 3rd windless morning of March. Not the part with tour buses or curated glacial paths. Farther, where gravel roads were nameless, and soon gave out to raw land. What signs existed were repainted every few decades by hand, or lost, and replaced with stones. If you asked her mother, she'd say she hadn't come for rest, or healing. She came for silence, a specific kind, the kind that seeps from old places and leaches into the bones. But it was about healing, really. It always is. She wanted to run from the past or into a better future, something meaningful. She wasn't a traveler in the glossy sense. She'd backpacked in her early 20s. It's where she found herself before she got pregnant. And this was a kind of repeat. If she found herself once, maybe she could find herself again. Her boots were scuffed. Her sweater smelled faintly of rooms that never saw sunlight. Her daughter was soft-eyed and quiet, quieter than other kids, quieter than most adults who mistake noise for proof of being. "You don't play much, do you?" her mother said, then teased her. Her eyes were so big, it must be to take in all the light, like binoculars. They didn't fly from Brazil. They took buses that rolled for days. Sometimes the girl slept on the floor, her head pillowed on a pack. Then they hitched rides. She counted guanaco from the roadside and wrote down their moods in a pink notebook with a broken lock. She made up games, where she gave names to every lake they passed. Not blue, but belly blue, ghost mint, stolen jewelry. When they passed a black lake, she didn't name it at all. "Why not?" her mother asked. "Because it doesn't want one," she said, and turned the page. 3. They stayed in an abandoned sheep station converted into a one-room guest house, run by an old man, with bones like coat hangers and a voice like 2 crumpled pieces of paper rubbed together. He said little but pointed often, to the peaks, to the wind, to the antique cuckoo clock that no longer ticked, the bird hanging listlessly and upside down off its perch. At night, Maria cooked rice and drank hot wine. The girl sat on the floor and listened to the building crack. It was almost summer, but the cold snuck in sideways. They came for the lake. Well, 4 places actually. a cave where people stenciled their hands on the rock 9,000 years ago. In red, ochre, and black, they didn't have a color for flesh. A valley beneath an ancient volcano where fossils still slept in the stone. A village on the coast that harvested seaweed, its one lighthouse blinking over a sea of penguins and petrified forests. And the lake, of course, no one knew how deep it was or where it got its water. There was no inlet, no outlet, shaped like an enlarged heart. No birds nested near it, no frogs sang. It was the perfect kind of place to make a sojourn to. But there were warnings, tales that it ate people, not with teeth, they said, with silence. But horror was attractive, it had power, and women spend their lives trying to tame it. Maria smiled at the man, the way adults do when they think they're humoring myth or senility. But the little girl did not smile. That night, she drew the lake. She drew submerged trees rising from the water like drowned sentinels. The water so clear you could see the forest underneath. She drew a man standing beside it. He had no eyes. 4. They set out from Puerto Bertrand early. The trail wasn't marked, but the old man had pointed with his spoon. Follow the shadow of the ridge until the shrubs disappear. Then look for it. You'll find it, if it wants you to. Maria packed 3 loaves of hard bread, 2 dozen boiled eggs, pale blue, laid by Araucana hens, some sliced meat, hard candy, and a thermos of mate. The girl brought her notebook, a stick of graphite, and a beetle she'd caught the day before, green with a gold stripe. She kept it in a small jar, air-holed and lined with dry grass. It fit in her pocket perfectly. The trail rose, then dipped. They walked for hours, barely speaking. The land wasn't loud, but it wasn't quiet either. It breathed. Wind pulled one way, while the trees leaned another. The sky, though cloudless, felt heavy, like it was pressing down just above your hair. Estella stopped often, to watch a bird or rest her shorter legs. Once she pressed her hand to the bark of a linga tree. "It's warm," she said. Her mother looked. The tree seemed no different than the others, but she didn't say so. The girl was strange, and Maria trusted her sense for strangeness. When they reached the basin, the air changed. Not colder, emptier, like stepping into a cathedral long emptied of hope. There should be a word for that. For what happens to churches when all those prayers finally give up and run away on sad little feet? The trees grew sparser here, thin-limbed and bowed. Sunlight touched the ground, but only softly. And then there was the lake. 5. It was smaller than expected, not heart-shaped, but a swollen circle. And the next time she looked, it seemed different. You couldn't pin down the shape. The surface was still, black, flawless. No ripples, no insects, no leaves disturbed it. They were right, she thought. It was dead silent. Maybe it was the air pressure of the valley, or the way the mountains rose around it like a fence, or something scientific she didn't understand. But it felt muted, almost deaf. She spoke to Estella a few times, saying nothing really, just to reassure they were both still alive. They stopped and sat down to get a good look at it. The lake wasn't a perfect mirror. It reflected the sky wrongly. Look up, you'd see clouds. Look down, you wouldn't. It was more like a black hole. If you stared long enough, and just right, it felt like you'd fall in. The girl pulled out her sketchbook and a few colored pencils, but couldn't decide between them. "What color is it?" Maria asked, trying to sound light. The girl frowned. "I don't think it's a color," she said. Everything has a color, Maria laughed. Except that, Estella answered, pointing with her eyes. 6. Maria stood and walked the edge. There were no footprints, no animal tracks. Even the wind seemed to keep its distance. The grass at the rim bent outward, as if it had once tried to crawl away. Was that how all lakes were here? She'd expected pebbles, algae, reeds where sunlight hit best, minnows flicking through the shallows. But there was just the strange black water, looking back black. Across the lake stood a wooden sign, half rotted. The carved letters had been eaten by time. Maria waved at the girl and slowly circled the lake. When she reached it, she brushed it gently. The wood flaked beneath her fingers. The girl sat cross-legged with her sketchbook. On a blank page she'd drawn the lake, just the outline, no color inside. That didn't make sense, but somehow it did. She wrote, "If you look at it too long, it starts to look back." Then she stared at the lake until her beetle began to scratch at its jar, looking for the world it had lost. They waited while her mother finished the quiet circle. She hoped her mother would come back in a way she didn't quite understand. 7. They made camp higher on the ridge, where they could see the lake but not feel its silence. Maria tied a scarf to a low branch to read the wind. It barely moved. No birds passed overhead. No insects whined. Time felt slowed, or had forgotten them entirely. It wasn't a bad feeling, just different, like waking inside an endless ball of wool. Estella sat on a rock with her back to the lake. She was drawing. A figure, too tall to be real, with a torso like bark and arms bent the wrong way. Its feet were rooted in water, its head tilted, listening. Maria sat beside her. "Who's that?" she asked. Estella didn't look up. "I don't know. I didn't draw it, I just followed the lines." When Maria reached for the notebook, Estella shut it quickly. "It's not done," she said, and pushed the book behind her. Then she wandered off, following a rabbit path, the beetle jar tucked in her elbow. Maria stayed by the fire, warming mate and assembling their dinner. Bread, eggs, meat. The shadow slipped down the slope. The stillness had deepened, not peaceful, watchful, as if the land had ears and they'd just twitched up. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Maria stood. "Estella." No answer. She hurried down the slope toward the lake, heart pounding. The surface was perfectly still, thick as black jelly. No sign of movement. Then she saw her. Estella stood ankle-deep in the water. Her boots and socks lay folded on a nearby stone. Her eyes were closed. The beetle jar floated beside her. "Get out," Maria said. The girl opened her eyes slowly, like waking from a dream. "I was listening," she said. "They don't talk like we do. They only make the shapes." "What shapes? Who?" Estella pointed behind her mother. There was nothing there. Maria stripped her boots, waded in. The water wasn't cold. It was wrong, as if it had no temperature at all, like a child might think of outer space. She lifted her daughter and carried her back up the slope. "Don't go there alone again," she said, trying to sound stern. "I didn't," Estella said. That night, Maria found the notebook tucked under the girl's sleeping roll. The figure she'd drawn was no longer still. It was walking toward them. 8. By morning, the girl had forgotten the drawing, or said she had. She watched a hawk drift overhead in long, lazy spirals. She gave a name to a pill bug in her hand. Her mother didn't ask about the lake. They packed up, took down the tent, and started walking. The lake hadn't been what Maria hoped. She'd come to be inside nature, part of it, to commune with silence, not be silenced by it. Maybe she thought the quiet would slip in through her ears and hush her mind. But the silence here was different, wrong. It made her strange daughter a stranger. North, she thought, away. Just a few minutes on, through windless groves and old cattle paths, the trail widened. No sign, no markers, just a hush in the trees and a clearing where the air went heavy. It didn't shimmer or move. It just was, laid out below them like a terrible mirage. The same lake. The girl stepped forward. "We've already been here," Maria whispered. The girl shook her head. "Did we leave it?" They turned around, walked back the way they came, climbed a ridge. At the top they looked down. The lake again. They looked back. Also the lake. Across the far ridge stood two figures, a woman and a girl, very still. "Is that us?" Maria asked. "Not yet," the girl said. They camped again, this time on a patch of flat earth along the ridge, equidistant between both lakes. That night the girl showed her a new drawing. Not one figure, dozens, all tall, all thin, arms raised, feet still in the water, faces turned toward the ridge, toward them. 9. Maria woke before dawn. She'd had bad dreams, she knew that much, but couldn't remember them. It felt like waking the morning after being told you have cancer. For a moment, lightness, then all the weight returned. It hadn't been a dream. Estella was already outside, kneeling in the grass with her notebook open. "She came," Estella said. "You missed her." "Who?" "The giant girl. She came and drank from the lake." Maria scanned the basin. Nothing moved. But something had. The trees across the water were bowed, like from a passing weight, and at the edge of the lake were two wide depressions in the grass. She turned her back on it, something she hadn't done since they arrived, and looked for the other one. The marks were there too. "She didn't make noise," Estella said. "She just leaned down and scooped water into her mouth." Her hands were as big as boats. She was smiling, excited, telling it all as if it had just happened. Later, Estella drew her. The giant's legs bent like a deer's. Her hair was wild, the color of trees. Her eyes were open, but not looking at anything in this world. Maria said nothing. She just held her daughter's hand until the light came. They packed up and moved again. This time Maria was certain. The trip was over. They had found something, but it didn't lend power. It was power. Until now, she had believed this was her journey, and Estella was along for the ride. But something had shifted. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about Estella. And Maria's role was no longer to lead, but to protect. They walked a few minutes and reached the same lake again, this time from the north. She could see their old camp just across the water. She was wary now, and her eyes always found Estella, always measured the distance between her and the edge of the lake. They had to escape. 10. Estella stood knee-deep in the lake again. That's how Maria found her the next morning. She woke to an empty tent, and when she stepped outside, there she was, down the slope, hands cupped, lifting water to her mouth. "Stop," Maria shouted, striding down the hill in long steps, like she imagined moonmen would have walked if the moon were a slope. Estella drank anyway. The surface didn't ripple. That stopped Maria. We live all our lives under the illusion that certain laws are fixed. Let a glass go, it falls. Disturb water, it ripples. He says we can go now, Estella said. Who says? That I'm not yummy enough. For what? Estella looked at the trees, then the lake, then her mother's hands. He says he only eats broken things, that he likes the taste. Sometimes he keeps people, just the parts that want to stay. What do you mean? What are you talking about? But I'm too little, Estella answered. Come here. Estella came back. Her hands and feet were wet. Her eyes were somewhere else. But I think we should leave soon, she said, and I think you shouldn't get close to the lake. Maria led her back to the ridge. She kept glancing over her shoulder again and again. She spent the day worrying her fingers, then wringing her hands, staring at the lake like an adversary. She watched the sun rise and fall. She kept guard, making sure the water stayed in its boundaries. She was waiting for something. Something never came. They packed up their gear and lay in the tent that night, waiting for morning. It felt like forever. 11. They woke to the sound of fluttering, something with wings, a bat or bird, then a call like a little bell repeating. They stepped outside the tent. The lake was gone. Only grass now, a pale brown circle, brittle. At the center, bones, fish bones, ancient boat ribs, a ring of ash. Estella didn't speak. She walked to where the water used to begin and knelt. It left, she said. I thought you said we should leave soon. It's the same thing, the girl replied. They walked until the ridge broke, and beyond it, nothing waited. The other lake was gone too, just dry stone. 12. That night, in a motel where the vending machine buzzed and the mirror had a smear across its edge, Estella brushed her hair. She paused. Do you think he'll follow us? Maria looked up. Who? The one from the lake? No, Maria said. No, it was just the altitude, I think. Estella nodded. She turned back to the mirror. Her face was small, distant. Maria watched the brush rise and fall, the soft rhythm of the present. There was nothing here for her. Only the broken looking to be made whole, and the whole waiting to break. And beyond it, the lake, waiting to eat.